Hi, I'm Daniel Fisher, and on today's Synth Clips, we're going to talk about learning the intervals. And by that, I mean the intervals between one oscillator's pitch and another oscillator's pitch. And there's lots of ways to do it. I'm going to show you a way that you don't have to be a musical expert, and it works very well for me, and it definitely works in the synthesizer realm where things may not always be in perfect tune. You know, you might not even be referenced to A440 at any given moment. And so this will help you create intervals against whatever frequency you happen to have at the moment. And why is this important? Well, one, it lets you set up oscillators quickly, but more importantly, it lets you do that live. So when you're just playing and you reach up with one hand and you want to start adjusting oscillators wherever they are, it really helps if in your mind you already know where you want that pitch to go. Then it's just a matter of how do I finesse the curve of getting to that interval. Instead of worrying about the interval, you can actually be more artistic. And so how do you do it? Well, the way that I've done it since just decades is that I have a song that I know really well for each of the main intervals. And I know those songs so well that I can start on any frequency and give you that song starting on that. It's like Happy Birthday. You know, anybody can start Happy Birthday on any frequency, you know, within their singing range and start singing Happy Birthday. And so it's like that. Now, I'm going to show you the tunes that I use, but I really don't want you to just learn those, especially if you've never heard of those tunes before. I'm an old man. But if you take the time to find tunes that you know really well that have the interval that you want, it'll be so much better for you because they're just ingrained in your nature, and it'll really help, especially when you're starting from a frequency that's not in Western tuning. So first I have to tell you that I'm playing the new Moog Matriarch Dark Semi-Modular Analog Synthesizer. I've been waiting for this for a long time. I mean, I get why the colors are there on the regular ones and how it ties in with the buttons and it helps you see what's going on in the front panel, the back panel, and everything else. But this is the look I want to have in front of all my other Moog gear. So I'm really excited that this has come out. Everything else about it's the same. And the reason I chose the Matriarch Dark today, other than how beautiful it is because it has 4 independent oscillators that can each be tuned to their own frequency. And so you have 3 frequency knobs to tune against oscillator 1, and then you also have a fine tuning that'll adjust the whole thing. And then, of course, your keyboard and pitch wheel modifies all of those as well. So I thought it would be a really good keyboard to show you the power of knowing your intervals, especially when you're playing live and you need to turn these quickly and musically to do something interesting to create new chords, new shapes, new ambiances. So the first musical interval is unison. That's the exact same pitch or slightly detuned. And that one's easy. Everybody knows unison. But just the same, I'm going to do it. So, I play a note and I bring up oscillator 1. I bring up oscillator 2. And I always like to leave them offset just a little bit to keep that motion. If you haven't noticed, I'm using a square wave right now just because. So the next interval is a minor second. It is simply a half step away from your first note. And man, there's only one song I ever use for that, and it's the theme from Jaws. And you may not need to set your oscillators a half step apart very often, but when I do, that's my go-to song. So the next interval is a major second. That's 2 half steps away, and the song I use for that is Chopsticks. So if I hear this note, I hear this note, and in my head I hear them together. The next one is a minor third. Now, I'm an old man, so I use a song that most of you probably never heard before, but it's from an old TV show called Dragnet. And the main theme went like this. And so there's my minor third. but you should use your own song with a minor third that you know really well. And while you're picking these songs, it's really important that you test them and prove that they really are the right interval, because no sense memorizing a wrong song for the wrong interval. You don't want to teach yourself incorrectly. So at least make sure you get them all right, and then write them down or put them in your phone or something. So for the major third, I go way back into the 60s when I was a kid, and I used to watch Three Stooges reruns. And when there were three of them, and they'd say hello, they would always sing one major third perfect fifth, like this. Hello, hello, hello. Now sometimes when there were four Stooges together, they would do one major three, perfect fifth, and a flatted seven, or a dominant seven, and that would sound like this. Hello, 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 hello. And my next interval is a perfect fourth. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 half steps. And my go-to song has always been Here Comes the Bride. And to show you this in practice, no matter, I'm just going to try and randomly pick it up. Here comes the bride. Different up. Here comes the bride. Here comes the bride. It doesn't matter where I start. I know where to go for a perfect fourth, and that's what makes it so good for something as loosey-goosey as oscillators in a synthesizer. The next interval has several different names. Diminished fifth, flattened fifth, tritone, the devil's interval, and the song I use for that is Rush's YYZ. A little trivia, YYZ is the call letters of one of the airports they were at, and they were hearing YYZ in Morse code, and that was the basis for the rhythm of that song. But the interval that I'm talking about is this. Tritone. 6 half steps. The next interval is a perfect fifth. That's 7 half steps, and it's a really common interval to set two oscillators apart. And that's because it just sounds really good, it transposes really good, it sounds really good through distortion. That's basically your guitar power chord. And if you stack multiple fifth intervals, you get lots of really fascinating chords. It's just a good one to know. And my go-to song has always been Also sprach Zarathustra, or as everybody else knows it, the 2001 theme. You know, so it's also what I use if I want to hear 1, 5, 8, or 1 and perfect fifth and then the perfect octave. The next interval can either be called an augmented fifth or minor sixth. And I'm going to use Usher's Yeah, right? So, and it starts with a fifth, but then it goes to the augmented fifth or minor sixth. So there's your interval. The next interval is a major sixth, or 9 half steps, and my major sixth song has always been the NBC logo. So this next interval is either the flat 7 or the dominant 7, and it's a really good interval to know. It's used in pop music all the time. It's used in dance music, electronic music. Just a really, really popular interval, but it's crucial that you have a way to come up with this interval because it's not in the natural major scale. It is a flattened seventh. So again, I use that Four Stooges. Hello, 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 hello. And now the second to the last interval before we get to octave is the major 7. It's a half step away from the octave. And I have 2 songs that I use. A really old one is Bally High. I also use Color My World from the 70s. So it's this interval. And that's an interval that kind of sounds weird together. It's good to know it though. And now the very last interval within the octave is the octave. That's 12 half steps. And if you had to have a song for it, I'd use My Sharona. So like I said, it's important that you find your songs. You can use mine if you want, but really, if you find a song that resonates deeply with you to where I could start you on any note and you could start singing that song from that note, that's the way to go. So now I just want to play a little bit on this gorgeous Matriarch Dark and play with the different oscillators and I'm going to just freeform it, but if I think about it, I'll try and say the intervals as I'm doing it, and you'll just see how handy it is to be able to do that in real time. And the best way to do that, again, is to have those songs memorized. So an oscillator interval I use a lot is the perfect fifth, and so when I need it, I just hear the pitch and I think of the song 2001, so I'll start here. Ba, 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 and a fifth rings perfectly, so you can really dial that in easily. And the beauty of the fifth is it just travels so nicely. And you can play chromatically. It's just a good interval. So now I'm going to detune another oscillator, and I'm going to set that to a major third, along with the fifth that I already have. So I do the Three Stooges. Hello, hello, hello. Now I have a major chord. And now I'm going to add a fourth oscillator up at the flattened 7. So again, my Four Stooges. Hello, 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 hello. Don't have enough room, I go up an octave. And there it is. So being able to do this live is really useful, and it's very musical, and it really separates the beginning synthesis from a really good live synth performer. I mean, sure, anybody can sweep the cutoff knobs, but how many people can sweep the different pitches of the different oscillators in a way that doesn't sound bad? And you're not going to be able to do that if you don't have those intervals in your head. There's just too much going on. And again, perfect pitch isn't going to help you here because who knows where the first oscillator's set. All you want is a perfect interval against that pitch. So now I'm going to do a minor third interval and then keep doing more minor thirds. So I'm going to stack all minor thirds. That'll make a diminished chord like this. Now I'll stack perfect fourths. And to hear them separately. And stack fourths work really good. So now I'm going to stack some perfect fifths. And this is a great ethereal chord that doesn't have any tonal center. It just moves freely throughout your song. Put some glide on, put some... So now for the last thing, I'm going to just play with my right hand, and with my left hand, I'm going to keep changing the other three oscillators against the first oscillator. So hopefully that'll motivate you to go ahead and learn a different song for each of the intervals within the octave. And then really practice them. Like you're in a car, you're driving, sitting somewhere, just randomly pick out a frequency and try and start all your songs against them. You don't want to just know the songs in the key they're written in. You want to be able to do them to any frequency you pick out. And that'll really translate to using it with the synthesizer. If you have any ideas for future Synth Clips topics, just write them in the YouTube comments below and we'll put them on the list. If you have any questions about the Moog Matriarch Dark Semi-Modular Analog Synthesizer, please contact your Sweetwater sales engineer. My name is Daniel Fisher. Thank you very much for watching.